Thank you. I actually can't see how many of you guys are watching me right now, which is a little different from the way I did it last year. But thanks to everyone for joining me. We are now just a couple of minutes away from the first pick in this year's MLB Draft. We're going to do 37 picks tonight, the entire first round, plus 8 picks in the competitive balance A round. The remainder of the draft, rounds 2 through 5, will take place tomorrow. So just stand by for a minute or two while I get everything else set up here and share this link to some other social media channels. Hopefully you found it via Twitter. I'll share it to Facebook and some other things here. And we're also going to have the draft on in the background. There we go. Okay, we don't need to be that loud, do we? So, excellent. Yep, so just bear with me for a second, and I will be taking your questions. Also, every time there's a pick announced, I will make sure I share with you guys my thoughts on that particular pick. But then also, I will try to take as many of your questions as I can. We'll do this for about an hour, till about 8 p.m. Eastern. I think that'll get us through about pick 9 or 10, and then I'll log off to go eat dinner, among other things. And I'll write up a recap of every pick that happens tonight. I'll just go team by team with thoughts on each one of the picks that we saw take place tonight. An action-packed night. That's what they're promising us on MLB Network. Might be a little light on the action. I guess it depends a little bit on your perspective. I love the draft. I wouldn't exactly call it action-packed, but that's just me. And also, if you have questions, you can just submit them by responding to the tweet, which I just retweeted. Just send them to at the Athletic MLB rather than sending them at me. I won't necessarily see them because I'm going to be talking to you guys as we do this. So, and the expectation, by the way, is that the first pick is going to be Spencer Torkelson. The drama, maybe it's more just a drama than action-packed, I think we'll start at pick 2, where the Orioles should take Austin Martin, but there have been rumors all day that they're looking at exploring a well-under-slot deal with one of several other players, Nick Gonzales or Heston Kjerstad in particular, maybe even Zach Veen. But I still think in the end they're going to take Austin Martin because he's the best player in the draft. And when Mike Elias was scouting director of the Astros and they did a massively under-slot deal with the first overall pick, they did it with Carlos Correa, who was also first on their draft board anyway. They thought he was the best player in the draft. They were probably right. And they just managed to get him at a discount. But it wasn't that they didn't like him or thought they were picking an inferior player. It's that they actually thought in that case they were just able to save money. They got the best player, the player they wanted, managed to get him for slot that was much closer to the 6th or 7th pick in that particular year. This is actually interesting. They've got guys in the studio with no masks. My daughter is here. She's a little bit off screen. Oh, there she is. She's my assistant today. She's going to keep track of the picks for me. She's also we've got the actual MLB Network feed here on my iPad, which is just easier than, I have no television up here in the office. So it would seem like the easiest way to keep track of this.
The closed captions don't line up at all.
Oh, sorry. Well, it is live closed captioning. I am enjoying the candid shots of everyone in their office looking kind of bored, like all the GMs looking like they're at 6s and 7s. Like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do with myself. You know, they're supposed to be in a draft room, right? Yep. Oh, yeah. Dayton Moore. Black Lives Matter. How about that? A Black Lives Matter sign behind Dayton Moore. Good on you, Dayton. Is it Veen or a pitcher from the Jays? Hey, we have a question. Awesome. Is it Veen or a pitcher for the Jays? Are they out on Gonzales? No, I've not heard that they're out on Gonzales, but I think the way it lines up, they'll get Veen or Max Meyer. It is not impossible, but unlikely that they don't get one of those two players. I will give you the one scenario where that does happen, where they don't get either of those players. And then I think they would take Gonzales. One is Torkelson. 2 is Baltimore. Baltimore takes Austin Martin in this scenario. 3, the Marlins apparently really like Max Meyer. I like Max Meyer a lot too. I had him fourth on my board. I had Asa Lacy third, and everyone seems to think the Marlins are going to take Asa Lacy. So let's just say that they decide, whatever the reason, that they take Max Meyer with the with the third pick. Sorry, Kansas City could still just take Veen at 4, or they could take Lacy. But in this scenario, if they've already planned to take Veen, worked out a deal, they just take Veen. So that's Torkelson, Martin, Meyer, Veen. Then the Jays are there, and they could take Gonzales. But I think they would just take Asa Lacy. They'd be kind of nuts not to take Asa Lacy in that scenario because he's just a better player. Nick Gonzales is going to go in the top 7 picks. I feel incredibly confident in that his floor is Pittsburgh. He's not anywhere near on a caliber of these other guys we're talking about here. I mean, if the Jays reach down for Gonzales, they are absolutely reaching down. Oh, and we have the commissioner. We are about to get the first pick.
We appreciate that MLB Network, ESPN, and ESPN Deportes are bringing this year's draft to a wider audience. Throughout tonight's podcast, we will be honoring some of the frontline heroes who are lifting up their fellow citizens during the pandemic. To all those who are finding ways to help in this time of need, you're an inspiration. We thank you. As we continue to work towards safely resuming play, we congratulate the young players, their families, and their coaches on this important night. We look forward to members of this class one day joining the great players in the major leagues. For many reasons, these are unprecedented times in our country and also painful times. We share in the sadness and outrage that has resulted from the national tragedies that include the deaths of George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and others. Tonight, I join our 30 club-based operations officials as they recognize, on behalf of our entire industry, that systemic racism and inequality are devastating problems. That we can each do more to help. That baseball can do more as an institution. That Black Lives Matter, and that we are united for change. This moment is a call to action, to acknowledge the ills that exist, to show the solidarity with the Black community in its efforts to end racism and injustice. We want to utilize the platform afforded by our game to be not only allies, but active participants in social change. I now turn the 2020 draft to the Detroit Tigers, who have the first selection. Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, now we get to sit and wait for 5 more minutes. I always forget this part. Actually, that was pretty good, though. I am very pleased to see MLB acknowledge Black Lives Matter, acknowledge the murder of George Floyd, because they could have just skipped it. Honestly, they could have just passed right over it. Maybe I set a low bar, but I'll take it. I see another question here. What will be the most outrageous comp made tonight? How many Mike Trout comparisons will we see? That's interesting. I wonder if Austin Martin will be compared to some other Vanderbilt player from the past, or Spencer Torkelson will be Barry Bonds because they both went to Arizona State. Or will we just see too many of the same race comparisons that are such a ridiculous feature of baseball commentary, particularly in the draft? My favorite is how every Stanford right-hander is always Mike Mussina. Reminds me a lot of Mike Mussina. Does he? Does he really now? Yeah, but we don't have a Stanford right-hander going in the first round. I don't have any Stanford players on my board this year. So unfortunately, we won't get a chance to get a Mike Mussina comp. Sorry. What do I think the Cubs do? So I have a mock. I updated my mock at about 4 o'clock Eastern, about 3 hours ago, with the latest information that I'd heard. I would encourage folks to feel free to go check it out. The last thing I heard on them was that Pete Crow Armstrong was kind of in their sights. I think they didn't necessarily think he was getting to their pick, but now I'm fairly confident that he is. And I think they'd take him over Justin Foscue, who would be their top college bat for that pick, and over Mick Abel, top high school pitcher on the board. And they were one of the very few teams I had linked to him in the top 20 or so. David Hart says, my quarantine hair is looking good. Thank you. Thank you. About 3 months from my last haircut. I mean, I guess one advantage of having curly hair, and there are not any. Can I show them? See? It's hard work. But one thing is it doesn't go down, right? It just goes out. So I suppose, like, from a hair care perspective, I'm okay. My colleague Alex Coffey asks, who is old Hoss Radborn? My daughter knows, and I know, but we can't tell you. Sorry, we've been sworn to secrecy. And if you follow old Hoss, you know he's a violent, angry man. So I'm not going to cross him. He's also tall. He's very tall. And I am not very tall. He's like Roderick Spode, for those of you who read P.G. Woodhouse. Okay, do we have the pick? El Vila. Excellent. Let's do this. Hey, if the pick is in, just announce the pick. I feel like we did this last year. Those of you who watched me on Twitter, on Periscope last year, if the pick is in, just tell us the pick. Like, let's go. Oh my God, are they actually going to commercial? They went to commercial. Now this is fantastic. Anyway, feel free to keep hitting me up with questions. I feel like this isn't going to get interesting until at least pick 2, but I'm happy to keep taking your draft questions for now. I will also say that the Mick Abel situation, it's not really a situation about him, but just I'm not really sure when we're going to see the first high school pitcher taken. Last year, Quinn Priester was, I think, the 18th pick. Funny enough, my daughter came with me to see him last spring. The first time we went to Chicago, and we drove like way, way out into the sticks. Yeah, not really the sticks, but it felt like it. Priester was the first high school pitcher taken. It was, I think, the latest that we'd seen the first high school pitcher taken in something like 30 years. So I think we might beat that. It would not surprise me at all if we got through 20 picks without a high school pitcher taken. I'm not guaranteeing that. I'm just saying that's what was in my latest mock. There are a couple of teams interested in Abel. Pittsburgh at 7, San Francisco at 13. I mentioned the Cubs at 16. That's 3 of the teams that I've actually had linked to Abel in all of my conversations with scouts and executives. We'll see. We'll see if that actually pans out. Is Sabato, another question from the Twitters, is Sabato the consensus pick for Texas? Seen it's mentioned as a signability pick. How far from best player available is he at pick 14? Look for Aaron Sabato on my list. She's got my top 100 out, so I can keep talking to you while she looks. Aaron, Aaron Sabato, Sabato. Aaron. Struck an Aaron. He's definitely on the first page somewhere. Yep. 35th. Okay, so I've got him ranked 35th, about 20 spots below where the Rangers are projected to take him. It's a bit of a signability pick. I think it's also an exit velocity pick. Sabato apparently posts huge, huge exit velocities. He is a big, strong kid. However, he doesn't clearly have a position. And I have a hard time, even with an American League club, obviously they have the DH spot if that's what it comes to. I have a hard time using a first-round pick on that type of player where your downside is nothing, right? If he doesn't hit, he's got nothing. And also, here we go. And also your ceiling is somewhat limited. It's very hard as a poor defensive first baseman who's a DH to be like an MVP type player. So I think they're cutting off their upside. Let's wait and see though, if they take any savings from that pick and go over slot in subsequent rounds. I'm certainly not ruling that out. They could go out in rounds 2 and 3 and go get some high ceiling players and maybe change my opinion of the draft, of their draft as a whole. Here we go.
With the first pick of the 2020 MLB Draft, the Detroit Tigers select Spencer Torkelson.
Okay.
Third baseman from Arizona.
Well, that was not very dramatic. Torkelson came into the spring as probably the number 1 overall pick, and he ends it as the number 1 overall pick. This is a very safe pick, I think. I feel like one of you asked, by the way, is Torkelson the first right-handed first baseman to go 1-1? I believe that's true. I think there have only been 3 first basemen ever taken at 1-1, and they're all high school guys. He is the first college first baseman to go first overall.
Don't write the team.
He is, you don't have to, just write the number. Thank you. Just keeping track for me. I enjoy that he's listed as a third baseman there. I would never rule it out. He's going to end up at first base or maybe left field. He's going to hit. He's going to get on base. He's going to hit for a lot of power. I could see him settling in as a guy who hits 260 with a pretty high walk rate and a high strikeout rate and 30-plus home runs. And that's going to play anywhere. And he's not a DH. I actually thought the first time I saw him, I thought, there's a chance this guy ends up at DH. But honestly, from talking to more and more people, especially people who saw him and who had no stake in him because they knew he was never going to get to their pick. We knew that in February. He was going to go pick 1 or maybe pick 2 at the worst. Everyone was saying, no, he's a better athlete than you think. He moves fine. There's really no good reason he couldn't go to left field. So I've written him up as a first baseman, possible left fielder. If they want to try him at third base, hey, go with God, right? Absolutely. They tried Ryan Braun at third base. That didn't work. That was his college position. That was never good. But why not? There's really not much harm. It's not that Torkelson is so bad I would think he was, say, going to hurt himself, for example. So I'm pretty much good with that. And like I said, it's a safe pick. If you're a Tigers fan, you should be pleased. You just got the second best offensive prospect, second best position player prospect in your system. Maybe the best. I got to think about that. Riley Green definitely offers you more upside, but Spencer Torkelson is here. I mean, this is what you see is basically what you get. Another question. Why is Foscue, that's second baseman from Mississippi State, projected to go in the first round to the Cardinals when he's in the 60s on my top 100? Are they that high on him? It's not just them. Cubs, Diamondbacks, Cardinals, and other teams down in the 20s, they all seem to love this kid. And I'm not entirely sure why. I've heard that the exit velocities are good. He is an okay offensive second baseman, college second baseman. By the way, if you're paying attention here, here's your reward. The Orioles are taking Heston Kjerstad with the second overall pick. So there's a shocker. And that definitely throws some things into disarray. So I do think Foscue is very overrated by the industry. Now, I've only watched video and talked to scouts about him. I did not have the benefit of going to see most of these players. So, just keep that in mind. And my mock has already gone to hell, and it's only pick 2. How about that? So, it's okay. My daughter says it's okay. Thank you. Thank you for your support. I do appreciate that. Yeah, that's kind of shocking with Kjerstad going 2. Now, I will say, of all the players that the Orioles were supposed to be talking to with the second pick about cutting some kind of deal, Kjerstad always made more sense to me than Bailey or especially Gonzales, because Kjerstad is a pretty good exit velocity guy with pretty legit, definitely pull power and some athleticism. So I don't think he's as good as Austin Martin. I don't know if the Orioles had concerns about Austin Martin or not. Maybe I'll find that out in the future. I do think they got a player who also does a lot of things that the Orioles tend to like, whereas Nick Gonzales is not that kind of player for me. Nick Gonzales is a pretty limited upside player. So, this is going to be pretty shocking. And then, the things may change immediately to pick 3, pick 4. I could definitely see Austin Martin, for example, getting to, does he go to pick 3? Does he go to pick 4? So, this is going to be really interesting to see how some of these guys end up, how these next couple of picks fall. Oh, guys, stop talking. Stop talking. Get to the pick. We already know what the pick is.
What do you want me to do with the teams that got drafted to?
You can, but I know who's picking where at least. Yeah. You just put the first 3 letters or something. Or whatever. Yep. Okay, here's the next pick.
The Baltimore Orioles select Heston Kjerstad
Don't say I didn't tell you. So just to finish that train of thought earlier, we'll see what the Orioles do. They pick again once tonight at 30, and they pick second tomorrow at 39. Who they get in total is going to be the more interesting story. Like, I mean, I'm going to react to each pick individually here. This is probably going to be a story of who they get with all three picks. I wouldn't pass Austin Martin. I would not. I think he's that good of a player. I think he's that good of a prospect. I don't think we see many, especially many college players, as athletic, as electric as he is. He makes a ridiculous amount of contact, and it's pretty consistently hard contact. Those guys are really hard to find, and he's got some speed, and he's going to play a skill position somewhere. I am very surprised. I'm not dinging Kierstad. I have concerns about the swing and miss. I have concerns, not so much concerns about the swing, although other scouts have told me they have some issues with the swing. I don't really see it. He's got a leg lift, but he gets down in time. I don't really think that's a big issue. But I do think that the Orioles just took a corner outfielder when they had a chance for a player in the middle of the field. I'm going to be very interested to see what happens here with the Marlins, who were, as I said earlier, expected to take Asa Lacy with Max Meyer, a dark horse. The Orioles scouting director worked on the Vanderbilt coaching staff for a year. So he should know Austin Martin, and he'll have all the information on Austin Martin. So I don't know what they're going to do, because this was not a scenario that was most people just assumed the Marlins would simply take one of their pitchers at that point. I'm going to guess here, without hearing anything from the Marlins, I'm going to guess here that they take Martin now, and are probably thrilled with that. Are the Orioles getting too cute? How excited are the Marlins now? I think the Orioles may. Let's see who they get with the later picks. I think they may have gotten a little bit too cute here, but I also want to let this play out too before being too critical, certainly, of a pick that on its face, that just taken in a vacuum, I don't necessarily agree with. Stephen Bird asked, how many undrafted players will we see signed after June 14th compared with around 10 plus draftees in normal draft years? I think it's going to be all college seniors, guys signing basically to have a place to play next spring, or even in the fall if there's some kind of fall instructional league, or there's been talk of an extended Arizona fall league. I look at the COVID-19 data from Arizona and I'm thinking that's not going to happen, but hope springs eternal. I think a lot of players are just going to go back to school. A lot of them will just say, I'm going to go back to spend another year. The NCAA gave everybody an extra year of eligibility, so go back to another year of four-year school. High school players will go to four-year schools, or they'll go to junior college. For most guys, it's the better option than taking $20,000. If you go back and have a half-decent year next year, if you're not a senior next year, you're probably going to get more than 20 grand. If you're a senior next year and you have a huge year, you'll probably get more than 20 grand. We've seen seniors taken in the top 5 rounds and gotten bonuses higher than that. So, and your downside is what? You get $1,000 at worst. I could potentially see that. I'm just going to turn this down a bit. I could potentially see that somebody saying, oh, well, if I go back to school and I'm not that good, I only get $1,000, or I don't sign. But 20 grand is take out a little bit for taxes. It's not life-altering money in any way, and I would certainly no high school player or junior college player with a 4-year commitment anywhere should be taking that kind of money. So this is really interesting. I was even just texting with some other folks in front offices further down after the Marlins, and I'm getting back just telling them that Kierstad was going to be the second pick, and it's wow, a lot of wow. And apparently this is going to be Max Meyer, the third pick. That's interesting. That's pretty interesting. Secondhand source there, but I did mention that. I mentioned that as a possibility earlier today in my mock. All hell breaking loose, huh? I guess it was action-packed. I take it back. Oh, this is funny. I won't say who it is, but a team picking outside of the top 10. Source said, just spoke with some people and can confirm Kierstad will not fall to us, because I was asking how far, if they were hearing that Kierstad might get down into their pick. Apparently he will not. So, whoops.
I'm trying to understand most of this.
Yes, you're trying to understand. Yes. My daughter would have come on at least one scouting trip with me. She's done one with me every year, and she came to the Under Armour game last year, which was a lot of fun.
That was fun.
So you did see many of the high school players he'll be taking tonight. yeah, this is too. The commercials are fine. I understand. You got to pay the bills, especially now. Less talking, more picking. How does this affect what the Blue Jays do at number 5? So this gets really interesting. If this next pick is Meyer, then the Blue Jays will get one of Zach Veen or Austin Martin. Now, if the Royals were linked to Zach Veen basically all spring, but if I'm them, I'm throwing this all out the window and I'm taking Austin Martin. And then the Blue Jays get Zach Veen, which is awesome. A player they didn't think they were really going to get. If there's really no bad scenario here for the Blue Jays. So that's interesting that the Marlins would take Meyer. I don't know if it's because they just believe he has a higher ceiling as a starter than Lacy, or if they want him in the big leagues this year. This is fascinating. This is like, actually, this is way more interesting than I thought it was going to be. Despite the fact that my mock is all shot to hell. This also has implications even going on down for like Seattle maybe getting a player they didn't think they were going to get. Max Meyer. Well, those of you tuning in are getting a great reward because I'm hearing these. I didn't think I was going to get this. People are just texting me. The Miami Marlins. Put Miami. We have a couple questions here. USCB Gaucho, thanks for doing it. Oh, you're welcome. Absolutely. Happy to do it. I was going to do one on my own, but then I was just having conversations with our Olivia, our social media person. Thank you, Olivia, for all your hard work on this. She set everything up so I could just show up and talk. And, we decided to do it through one of their channels. By the way, I will say not seeing Max Meyer this spring was a particular disappointment for me because I have multiple good friends in the Minneapolis area. Both my partner and I do. And we were there. Absolutely. Go there, scout, eat some of that great food in Minneapolis. And obviously, Max was done after 4 outings, as everybody else was. Hunter Harwell asks, do I believe Blaze Jordan makes it to campus at MSU, Mississippi State? I don't think so. I think he's going to get drafted in the second round. There's a non-zero chance you hear his name before the night is out. Would only be with one of the competitive balance picks. I don't think he's worth that kind of pick. He's down in the 3rd round on my top 100. Which is to say, I think he's a prospect. There's so much work you have to do with his swing to get to that power. And he only plays first base, which really he's got to hit. He's got to hit and hit for power or you have nothing. On the plus side, he's 17.5. And there are teams that value that extremely highly. And also it does just mean you have more development time with him. So that's not the worst thing in the world. FL Marlins 85, where would Dylan Cruz have gone in this draft if he had stayed in? So if Dylan Cruz had been signable, I think he would have gone in the second round as Rhys Hines did last year. Now, they're not exactly the same kind of player, but there's a lot of similarities, especially in that they're big potential with way too much swing and miss currently. In Cruz's case, it's a really good-looking swing, and a lot of people really think he could turn into a very good hitter with some power. In Hines, it was more otherworldly power and huge questions about whether he would hit it. Hines fell to the second round, and I sort of thought all along Cruz would end up somewhere in the second round. And I would have ranked him somewhere in the second round of my top 100. He pulled his name out of the draft as I was finishing the top 100, so I just took him out. So now what'll be interesting here is now the 1 and 3, I'm okay. Players on my board, Austin Martin 1, Asa Lacy 3, are both still available. Now, they could just go bang, bang, 4 or 5. But both of these next 2 teams also love Zach Veen. Do they stay with what may have been an original plan to take Zach Veen at either of these picks? Or do they say, opportunity knocks, open the door, and just take Martin, take Lacy? I would. But I'm a best player available guy. Also, bear in mind, Kansas City, another one of the teams that has 2 picks before we get to pick 45 or so. They pick again tonight in the competitive balance A round, and they pick 4th in the second round. which would be 41. So 3 picks in the top 41. They may be considering moving money, whereas Toronto picks again at 42, but I don't think they have any competitive balance or compensation picks at all. I am actually just double checking the draft order to make sure I'm not talking totally out of turn. No, they do not. So trying to manage the money is a little different for them. Asa Lacy to Kansas City. Okay. Wow. So sorry, I'm texting back all these people. But I'm getting a lot of wow, wow, wow. And now like just so-and-so fall to us that we didn't think we had a chance to. This is amazing. Yep, everybody shocked. Yeah, a lot of wow, shocking, interesting one. Martin, somebody speculating Austin Martin must not want to take a haircut, meaning not to take a big discount over the slot value. The only baseball-related reason, I see a few questions. I'll get you guys just 1 second. The only baseball-related reason I can see for Martin falling, and Amos Ruzzi, I see just asked that actually. Hi, Amos. Sorry, I'm not going to see you at Gen Con this year. Martin had trouble throwing at the beginning of the year. And there was a question over whether it was an actual issue or just a temporary minor injury or soreness or something. Nobody has said to me during this process that they had a serious concern about Martin's health or throwing. Maybe they're not telling me. It's always possible. I don't think that's it. I'm guessing this is he wanted slot at 2 and they wouldn't give it to him. And some of these other teams may not have had the conversations with him either, so they don't know necessarily what he's asking for. Cole Ouchie says, who do you see the Braves taking at 25? I had them with, I'm not changing anything from my last mock for now. Nick Swiney, lefty at North Carolina State. So we'll see. We'll see who ends up falling, right? It depends if something crazy goes on. Now I'm hearing the Jays are going to take Austin Martin, which if that's the case, that is an enormous home run for the Blue Jays. I mean, Blue Jays fans should be over the moon to see that. I think they get the best player in the draft. Maybe he plays third, maybe he plays second, maybe he plays center field, but he is everything you could look for in a college position player. He's athletic, he's extremely polished, he's disciplined, and he's going to play some skill position somewhere. And so then Zach Veen is suddenly sliding a little bit. Yeah, it's Austin Martin. I have this now confirmed. That's huge. Blue Jays fans should be absolutely ecstatic. You can put Austin Martin with the Blue Jays. He's the top guy on the list. Asa Lacy was the last one. He went to the Royals. You got that one, right?
Did I miss one?
Nope.
Wait, so
I know it takes forever, doesn't it?
So
They haven't announced that, but he was the 5th pick.
Oh,
Yep.
but they haven't announced it yet?
Yep, they will. And if the pick is in now.
How do you know this before they announce it?
My daughter is asking how I know who the picks are before they're announced. Magic. Also,
Why do we even need this?
sources are texting me things. Why do we need this? Because what if it's wrong? I still remember the year the Cubs took Hayden Simpson. Sorry, Cubs fans. I apologize. And nobody knew. I think literally nobody knew before that pick was in. Are they going to tell us, or are they going to go to another commercial break? When they show the board like that, I'm assuming.
No, they're not, because we already know.
We already know this is true. This is true. This is why you watch me.
Can you hear me?
They may be able to hear you, yes. Yeah. Oh, we're going to talk to Torkelson. I suppose it's important because he's the first pick, but couldn't we have done that? Never mind. That's why I'm not a producer. I'm just a talker. I have the best words, tremendous words. So assuming this is Martin here, I have never heard the Mariners on Zach Veen anyway. Zach Veen remains now the one player from my top 5 who hasn't gone. And actually, I had Hancock and Gonzales next. I would still think Hancock to Seattle. I wonder if Pittsburgh would go Veen if they'd never were they not considering Veen because they thought he was gone? Don't know the answer to that. Never really strongly heard them linked to Veen. But again, if they just assumed all year, well, he's not getting us. I know the Padres really liked Veen. I had heard the Rockies loved Veen, but we're assuming he wasn't getting to them. That might be his floor. I'm mentally thinking for the teams. I think that's his floor, Colorado. And he may get there. It's not the worst outcome. It's just maybe not what he wanted. So, but again, if something goes, I'm trying to think of who could really go. No, I think at this point, that's Veen's floor. I can't see them taking any other player over Veen. Yeah, let's see. Wow. This, I'm a little bit speechless. I did not expect it to go quite like this. Even though I'd heard these possibilities, I wrote the Max Meyer thing in my mock this morning, and I think everybody who'd been covering the draft, we'd all been talking about this thing, the Orioles trying to shop the bonus pick to and get a better deal. I am a little surprised that it actually happened. I said to somebody just 2 hours ago, maybe they're just posturing, trying to get Martin to agree to a lower number. I suppose in terms of credible commitment, right? If you try to get somebody to take a lower number, you actually have to be willing to walk away from the deal. I'll be curious if that story comes out in time. It's not going to come out tonight or tomorrow or anything. Did they negotiate with Martin? Did they value Martin more highly, or did they actually think Kjerstad and Martin were pretty close to interchangeable and decide they would just take, say, the player maybe they thought was just very, very, very slightly less valuable? Yep. Next pick. This should be Austin Martin here. Oh, Canada, our home and native land. They should be singing. You should be popping Molsons or Labatt's all over Canada tonight. Well, maybe not in Vancouver because I think that's Mariners country, isn't it? But yeah, this is absolutely tremendous. The Blue Jays fans have got to be ecstatic. Like I said, you got the best player in the draft. That's exact. I can tell you, no matter what else the Blue Jays do in this, I'm going to you'll at least have that to hang your hat on. That will be my analysis tonight. The Blue Jays got the best player in the draft. I think it's fantastic. That's interesting. They listed him as a shortstop. I would send him out as a shortstop, honestly. I've never seen him there. I saw him at third base last May. And I had not seen him previously, and I couldn't get over how quick he was, how good his hands were. His throwing is fine. And then I saw him at the plate, and he's electric bat speed, and you can't get the ball by him. This is pretty exciting. And I think they got the best chance to get an offensive superstar certainly of any college player in the draft. There's a few high school kids who might come close to his potential, but they have far less probability because they're younger, and we haven't seen them. We saw Austin Martin for 2+ years against the best pitching in the country. So I'm very much president of the Austin Martin fan club, and Blue Jays fans should be over the moon right now. Do I expect Dax Fulton to sign this year? It's an Oklahoma high school kid, I think was also a Vanderbilt commit, who blew out his elbow, missed the entire spring. I have heard he would sign and that somebody might do an overslot deal with him in the second round. He was going to go in the first round if he'd stayed healthy. I will say, having just seen video, I wasn't totally shocked that he ended up having Tommy John surgery. Obviously, plenty of guys with good mechanics have Tommy John. Plenty of guys with bad mechanics never have it. Or you could be Chris Sale, throw 1,300 innings with bad mechanics and eventually blow out. Fulton's mechanics were pretty rough. I wonder if that affects teams' willingness to overpay for him. But I've also heard people say he's going to get a deal. So I'm wondering if he just had something in place already and goes probably in the second round tomorrow. Do I think Bitsko slips out of the first round? Aaron Clark with that question. Yes, that was my prediction in the mock. I have actually thought pick 30 for the Orioles was a pretty likely landing spot for him. Cleveland picks, I think, 3 or 4 after that. I should get that right. Draft order. Sorry, Cleveland picks 6 after that. So Orioles at 30, Diamondbacks at 33, Padres at 34, Cleveland at 36. All would absolutely go over slot for the right high school arm in those spots. I have heard several of them linked specifically to high school arms. In the case of the Padres, it was more to Justin Lang. In the case of the Orioles and Cleveland, it was more to Nick Bitsko. So if he slips out of the first round, though, it is not a commentary on his ability. So just keep that in mind. Will Pridemore. Hi, Will. How much of the weirdness is happening because of the change in draft rules? I wonder if it's if you're just talking about the shorter. Oh my God, Dan O'Dowd put a 70 on Austin Martin's hit tool. I love Austin Martin. Even I wouldn't have gone to 70. Good for you, Dan. The 5-round draft, I wonder if that's made people just reevaluate some of their strategies. But I don't know. Like I had Max Meyer 4th and Asa Lacy 3rd on my board. So for me to say I'm surprised that the Marlins that they took Meyer, it's not a commentary on Meyer or Lacy. It's just that I've been hearing everyone just assumed they were taking Lacy. They assumed it all along, unless Austin Martin got there because of the Vanderbilt connection. Then Austin Martin gets there and they don't take Martin. They still take Meyer. So I guess Meyer maybe was their guy all along. People just didn't know it till last night. I would have changed my mock this morning, but I heard it from a pretty good source last night, good enough to put it in the mock. But when I sort of talked to some other sources, I got come on, that can't be real, but it was. I see you, source. I see you. So the pick is in. Oh, do we have a question in the back?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we have a question here.
How come they put his weight differently on here than on here?
Oh, that's interesting. So I have a spreadsheet from, I took heights and weights from the MLB.com site, figuring they were probably the most reliable, but she saw different ones on the screen. It's possible some of those came from the college previously, from maybe they could be as old as his freshman year, and the other could be something more recent. Like if he had to fill out documents he had to fill out a form, the Major League Scouting Bureau. They don't have actual scouts anymore, but players are expected to submit some information, medical information, for example. So they may have actually taken it from there. He'd be asked to weigh himself and measure himself. So that my guess is that's where the discrepancy is. That's Captain America.
Yeah, no.
Sweater guy, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Padres PHX Bitsko to 30 with the Orioles savings. You may have missed. I did just answer that, but yes, I think that's a strong possibility. Seth Neeson Seth N. Eisen, sorry, I may have gotten that wrong, with the M's or another team not taking a player like Veen or another high caliber player because they did not spend the time to scout him because they didn't think he would fall to them, be a huge deficiency in their scouting, giving up a potential advantage. It's less of scouting, especially this year because you couldn't scout anybody. And I'm sure they saw Veen. Everybody saw Veen because he did play. And he was one of the only guys playing early. It would be more if you don't know what he's looking for financially because you didn't engage or because his advisors didn't engage. That often that happened with Matt Liberatore 2 years ago, where his advisors were so sure he was going in the top 10, they didn't engage with any teams outside of the top 10. And so once he started to slip a little bit, the slide accelerated until the Rays, who told me afterwards they actually didn't know what he was looking for. They just took him. Somebody there had even reached out to me. It's like, is there something? Is he hurt or something? Something we don't know about? And I said, I don't know. If there were an injury or makeup issue, which turned out there was not, I didn't know the reason. He just fell because he got past teams that were expected to take him, 2 teams that liked him but hadn't actually engaged and didn't know what he was asking for financially. And teams may not want to take that risk. You only have 5 minutes to make the pick. It's not a lot of time. If you don't get the agent on the phone quickly or the advisor on the phone quickly enough, it may not give you enough time to actually do the due diligence. And then you have to make the decision, right? You find out Zach Veen wants our full slot at this. Well, wait, we haven't discussed the merits of taking Zach Veen at full slot here versus Emerson Hancock, who might take $500,000 under slot. That's a discussion that would ordinarily take place over a couple of days, and you'd spend quite a bit of time on it. Here you have 5 minutes maximum. So I don't want to be too critical of any team here, perhaps not taking a player when they may not have done that kind of due diligence. It's not a scouting deficiency. It is an unfortunate consequence of the weird bonus structure existing in the Major League Baseball draft. I think if you could just take players and pay them whatever you wanted, it would be a little bit easier. Also, if there were fixed slots, and I'm not in favor of that, but if there were fixed slot values, you get drafted at this pick, you get this slot value, no negotiation, it would pretty much be straight. It'd be easier to predict, actually, but it would be way worse for players. So I'm not in favor of that. So my guess is this is Hancock. Some chance it's Nick Gonzales here. But I had, given the way the first 5 have gone and the fact that I really haven't heard the Mariners with Veen at all, I'm assuming that they're going to take Hancock. All right, let's go. Let's go. Let's go. Here we go. Okay. Emerson? Yes.
You got it right.
Oh, thank you. Yes. So the Mariners take, I think the guy I had actually predicted them to take in my mock. Emerson Hancock came into the year, I didn't do a ranking before the scouting season started. I believe he would have been the top college pitcher on my board. I think he was seen as the consensus top college pitcher, not just right-hander, but top college pitcher. He was still he was number 2 college right-hander on my board when I actually did the big board a week ago, behind Max Meyer. The Mariners didn't think that Hancock was even going to get to their pick as of a couple of weeks ago. And then it obviously became clear that he would. Hancock also didn't look great in 4 starts. I was at his start against Santa Clara, and he had below average breaking stuff, only threw 2 or 3 changeups the entire outing. And that's supposed to be his best pitch. And his arm action isn't great. Velocity's good. It was not elite, but the fastball does play, as opposed to his teammate Cole Wilcox, who I think we'll hear his name announced in about, say, an hour and a half or so. Wilcox has big velocity, but it plays down a little bit because I think it's kind of straight. Hancock working with that plus changeup, and especially if he gets in a pro ball and teams can tighten up the slider. I believe he calls them, there's 2 different pitches. He calls them both sliders. Neither was very good the night I saw him. Day, actually, it was the day. That guy with a 55, 60 fastball, 60 or better changeup, and at least a solid average slider, that's got a chance to get better. Generally, if your arm's that fast and you can spin anything, you can spin an above average slider. We'll have to see if you can do that. You got a chance for a number 2 starter. And so I think this is a pretty solid pick. And it fits Jerry DiPoto's general draft strategy. He does tend to play it safe with college guys with track records. They did that last year with George Kirby. He was a college guy with a track record, stuff, and good TrackMan numbers. I'm fine with that. I absolutely am fine with that. I think that's this is a perfectly cromulent pick for 6th overall. Now the Pirates here, I think, take Nick Gonzales. I'm not 100% sure, but supposedly this was Gonzalez's floor. In that case, the Padres could take Veen, but I think Veen's floor is 9. I'd be very curious to see if the Padres still take Robert Hassel, who I think they liked better anyway, or decide to get the now player with Reed Detmers of Louisville, college lefty, who's probably got the best command of the draft. Let me get back to some of these questions here. Pramit Bose, nice to hear from you. How close is Austin Martin to actually being big league ready? Give him a year and change. Typical elite college position player is a year, 1 to 2 years out. If we assume his position question is settled soon, could he be up? Well, in a regular scenario where he was playing this summer, I would say he could be up by next September. Who knows how this is going to affect players if they don't get to play at all this year. And that sucks, but it's the reality. He's pretty close, though. You make that much contact against the best level of pitching, you're not that far off. And if I were the Blue Jays, I'd actually consider starting him in Double-A next year. Oh, we have another pick. Look at us moving here. Nick Gonzales. Okay, the guy they were supposed to be taking all along. Let me talk about Nick Gonzales first before I answer these next 2 questions, although I think one of these questions is actually a joke. This is a bit of an uninspiring pick. Nick Gonzales is fine. He's fine. I see very, very little ceiling here. He's a kind of undersized. He's played shortstop, but he's a second baseman in pro ball. The power that he showed this year is very much the product of him playing 4,000 feet above sea level in Las Cruces. When he did have a series against Texas A&M, the last series he played this year, it was at College Station. He faced the best pitching he'd faced all year, and multiple scouts who were at that series says he looked awful. Now, I don't think he's awful, but I think he's probably not the type of hitter that you would like to get if you're taking a college position player at this point in the draft, nor does he have elite defensive skills to make you willing to take a little bit less on the offensive side. I'm not saying it's a bad pick at all. Gonzales ended up 7th on my big board because I just had to acknowledge the guy's got a high floor. He's going to get to the big leagues. He's better than Nick Madrigal, for example. Madrigal was kind of a similar player with no power. Gonzales doesn't have no power. He's got more than enough power that he's going to hit. I don't think he's going to be a 20 home run hitter in the big leagues. I think if he were to try to do that, he would lose too much batting average. But I think he's going to hit for a lot of average, plenty of doubles power, play solid second base. It's fine. It's not a franchise altering kind of pick. That's kind of my take on that. I'm pretty sure asking anyone know who the Astros are taking. I think we got about 2 rounds to go before we get to their next pick. So yeah. Sean, 1, 2, 3, any particular reason I think Martin Feller was just simply teams had higher players on their board. So I commented on this a little bit earlier. Apologies for repeating myself a bit. Yeah, Robert Hassel is going to be the next pick. So I think Veen goes to Colorado. So I don't think there was a concern with Martin, except maybe he wasn't willing to cut a deal. Why would he? He was the best player in the draft class. So that would mean Hassel, Veen. I believe I had Detmers to the Angels in my last mock. I changed my mock pretty significantly today. And so, that's the old version. I even have to remind myself. Reed Detmers, yes. So I don't know for sure, but I think that'll be the pick for 10. And it's probably about when I'll sign off here, actually. So I was talking about Austin Martin. I don't think there was any reason he fell, unless teams had some kind of concern about the throwing that I don't know about. But I don't know. And that's about as much as I'm comfortable speculating, just because I know he had throwing problems earlier this year. He didn't have them last year. So I do think the Blue Jays got a steal. They got an absolute steal. Heck, if you told me Austin Martin had to play second base because his arm was just no longer what it used to be, fine. He's a star. Nick Gonzales is a solid player. Austin Martin is a star. So, Mr. Pocket, I'm just so confused that the Royals could get that much more value at the number 30 spot that it makes sense essentially trading down from number 2 to number 8 pick. So where did I have Kierstad? I actually had Kierstad 11th on my board because of the strikeouts, because of swing and miss. And I still think he's a good player, but am I thinking about this wrong? No, you're not thinking about this wrong. I think when you pick that high in the draft, your probability of getting a superstar is so high that doing this strategy makes way less sense than it does if you're picking 7th or 9th. If you can move money around down there, your chances of getting a superstar to pick like that are much lower. So I don't agree with the Orioles strategy. I do want us to see who they end up getting at 30 and 39. Maybe that'll change my mind. Aaron Clark, last time the Phillies picked 15th, they got Chase Utley. Who should I be hoping for at 15 to make an impact even close to the level of Utley's on the franchise? Well, Utley's a borderline Hall of Famer. That's probably a lot to put on anyone in this draft. Who do I think could get there? I mean, I've had them taking Ed Howard in my mocks. He's a long way off, but he does have pretty substantial upside. He's a very gifted athlete. He can definitely play shortstop. He had some throwing issues this spring and even at the end of last summer. So let's see how that goes. Garrett Mitchell's an interesting one. Teams are scared by the fact that he's type 1 diabetic. He's got top 10 tools. And if the Phillies got him at 15, I don't know if they'd even consider him. If the Phillies got him at 15, you should be pretty happy. Acknowledge the risk, but also acknowledge the upside. And the fact is that the risk of the type 1 diabetes is as much one of us not really knowing, because we haven't had very many position players with type 1 diabetes ever. We had a lot more pitchers. So to me, acknowledge the risk, but acknowledge the potential upside. If Garrett Mitchell did not have type 1 diabetes, he might be a top 5 pick. He's an 80 runner. He can really play center field. He's got an above average to plus arm. I think the swing needs a little bit of work, but he has hit. That's 4 pretty good tools right there. So that might be the best answer to your question, Aaron. Mr. Pocket again, were the Orioles potentially that concerned Martin's arbitration clock would start too soon during their rebuilding process? No, I don't think teams ever think that way. I've never heard of a team thinking that we don't want him because he's going to get there too soon. It's the opposite. It's that teams often don't want to take a high school player because they think he's too far away. So I think this was very much about, we have $13 or $14 million in our bonus pool. I think that's what the Orioles had. I think it was 14. How do we best allocate that money to get the best overall bucket of players from, I think they had 6 picks, right? They had 5 regular picks plus the pick in the competitive balance A round. So I think that's what they're doing. I do want to see which players they get before passing judgment, but I don't love taking Kierstad over Austin Martin. And that in and of itself, I think, is a loss. How many years will clubs feel the effects of this shortened draft? It does depend a little bit on whether we get regular baseball next year. And by the way, if we don't have a vaccine, I don't know what baseball is going to look like next spring. Then it depends on a lot of other things, including states, states that have rushed to reopen or never fully closed. Some of them are experiencing second waves of cases right now. And perhaps those, what if Arizona is still having trouble next winter and spring training is affected and, Arizona State and University of Arizona are affected? I don't know. If everything got back to normal next year's draft is still going to be a bit weird because there will be so many players who should have signed this year, should have been drafted this year, who go into next year's draft. And many of them then will end up getting less money than they thought they were going to get because there just will be such a surplus of players for next year's draft. So I would say at least 1 more year and possibly 2. That's assuming that things basically get back to normal on the public health front. There are no guarantees of that, certainly. So sorry, it was a bit of a long answer, but I think it's a complicated question. Josh, one day. There may be a Josh Day drafted tomorrow from a junior college down in Mississippi. Look for the Red Sox or Dodgers on that one. It's pretty interesting. He's just outside my top 100. Do I think Austin Martin could be a leadoff hitter or more middle of the lineup? He's a 2-hitter for me. He's a classic bat your best hitter number 2. He's an on-base guy with pretty good power. I don't think he's a Mike Trout kind of guy in terms of like 30-plus home runs. But I think there's, is he a 40 doubles, 20 homers guy with a really high on-base percentage? Yeah, I think it's within reach. I'm giving you a ceiling, not what I think he absolutely is. So another question, heard anything on the Cubs liking Wilcox? I have not. I really don't think they would take him. By the way, I think there's going to be a better college pitcher there available there anyway. And I say that as somebody who's relatively high on Wilcox, in large part because I saw him twice in high school and he was really good. I drove a long way to go see him too, from Atlanta to Ringgold. So I like Wilcox, but I would probably take Cade Cavalli over him anyway. And I think Cavalli will still be on the board at 16. And Reed Detmers, at least right now, is also still on the board. So keep those in mind. Right. Huh? Yeah, the 5 minutes is an abstract concept. The third, excuse me, I did not properly identify. I did not put I didn't put Robert Hassel III into my spreadsheet. It's I. So I'll stick around for one more pick, and then I think I'll wrap this up. That'll be about an hour. Thank you all for joining me for this. I really appreciate it. It's a little weird. Usually I can see how many people are there. Now I have no idea. So hopefully I'm not talking to like 5 of you. I'm feeling good, by the way. Thank you. It started to get a little hot up here, didn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, right? Yeah.
Not just me?
No, it's not just you. Temperature up here in this is a, my house is split level, and the top floor has its own heating and cooling system, and it's always way different from the rest of the house. It's always too hot or too cool. So, yeah, I'm hearing V9. So that kind of ends Veen's slide, and I hate to call it a slide, because still going the top 10 is a great, great outcome. And Zach Veen is great. It's a little interesting that Zach Veen wasn't the first high school player off the board. And actually, we had all college guys until that. Did I forget? That's awesome. Right? It was all college guys, right? That is kind of amazing. I think it's indicative of the shortened draft. Someone asked earlier, I think that was Will Pridemore, asked about the some of the strangeness of this year, the result of the change draft rules. I predicted all spring this was going to be a crazy college-heavy draft. One, because it's a good college class, and two, because we had the 5-round draft. So far, we're only about a third of the way through, right? But so far, it seems to be holding true. Also, I think teams are just generally more wary of high school pitching, especially. I don't think this is a reflection of high school position players being undervalued. I do think teams are way more wary of high school pitching. And I will sort of leave you with this, that, and I'll stay just to comment on the Rockies pick and I'll sign off. I am really curious to see when the first high school pitcher comes off the board. If it's Mick Abel, which is still my prediction, it could go to the 20s. I'm not sure. I'm not 100% sure of that. I mentioned earlier a couple of teams I still think could be in the Mick Abel market. I do think I think it's going to be late, and it could set a record for the latest we see a high school pitcher taken. Just before we get this Rockies pick in, so I will have a day one analysis. I will write that tonight. It may be posted tonight, maybe posted first thing tomorrow morning. It depends a little bit, mostly on when I finish. And obviously it has to be edited and posted. Keep an eye out for that. I'll write something on every team that picked today. Tomorrow I'm going to do a Q&A on the site. I think it's at 1 p.m. Eastern. So it'll be a chat, but on the Athletic site, not on my personal site. So it'll be more baseball and draft focused rather than the kind of free-for-all topics that I typically do on my own site. The Claw Chats will resume on my own site probably next week. And then also tomorrow night, the draft resumes at 5 o'clock. Once that is done, I will start working on team-by-team recaps. Obviously, they'll be shorter this year. The average team only has 5 picks. It'll be a lot faster for me to complete, so that's a good thing. And I'm going to try to comment on every player. Obviously, that was never even a thought under the old draft system. 161 players, I'm probably going to know most of them. So, and if I don't, there's only a few guys to ask about. So I'm going to try to write something on every player, even if it's just to say, oh, this was a money saver, a senior sign, and so-and-so is not a significant prospect. I don't think we're going to see a lot of that. And I'm sure there'll be a few high school kids I haven't heard of, but I'm expecting that there won't be a ton of them at least. So as we wait for the very last pick, like I said, I'll just comment on this last one before signing off. But thank you all again for tuning in. I really appreciate it. I appreciate all of you who've read and subscribed to all my draft coverage the last few weeks. Zach Veen, I think the Rockies did extremely well here. I would guess I have not spoken to anyone directly with the Rockies about this possibility. I would guess they would tell you they were really shocked. Probably find out in a day or two, but I guess they tell you they were shocked that he got there, and I'm sure they're thrilled. Zach Veen is a very Rockies kind of draft pick, especially. He's athletic. Right now he plays in the middle of the field. He's got a lot of power upside. He's got a really good combination of present skill and long-term potential. Maybe a little bit more weight in terms of long-term potential. There's some swing and miss there right now, but I think he's also that classic long-levered high school position player who's probably got to learn some body coordination and also who's just going to get stronger too. And I think that will help him get more consistency with the swing and cut down on the strikeout rate enough that he can hit for a pretty good average and get to that 30-plus home run power. I do think he ultimately moves to right field, but we'll see. We'll see how his body develops over time. So anyway, thank you all again. Really appreciate everybody. Thank you so much to my lovely assistant. Look at this hair, right? Don't you want this hair? It takes a lot of product though.
It's mine.
It's hers. It's hers. It's true. But I kind of gave it to her, right? Anyway, Thank you again for watching. I will be back tomorrow with a Q&A and with a recap of day one. Look for all of that on the Athletic website. Thanks again.